There's a side of the internet that thrives in silence. Just anonymous usernames and whispered pain. And it's in that space between despair and connection that one of Japan's most terrifying predators found his victims. Takehiro Shirahashi, better known today as the Twitter Killer, wasn't a hacker or an ARG mastermind. He was just a man with a smartphone, profile picture, and a plan. Between August and October of 2017, he murdered 9 people, including 3 teenage girls, after all contacting them through Twitter. And it wasn't random. Since the early 2000s, Japan has seen the rise of online suicide communities, digital spaces where people with suicidal thoughts could speak openly, without fear of shame or judgment. Due to the cultural stigma around mental health in Japan, many young people found it easier to confide in strangers online than their own families. Platforms like Twitter became havens for vulnerability, and that's where Takehiro came in. Operating under the handle @HangingPro, he posted sympathetic messages like, "People are bullied all the time, at school and work. I want to help those who can't take it anymore." To anyone looking in, he seemed like someone who understood, someone who had been there too. But the truth was much darker. Takehiro used hashtags linked to suicide and depression to hunt. He would message users directly, promising to join them in a suicide pact or assist them in a peaceful death. He gained their trust slowly, reassuring them, listening, and manipulating. He would then ask them to meet. Once they arrived at his tiny 140 square foot apartment in Zama, he would strangle them, often after sexually assaulting them. He then dismembered their bodies in his bathroom. Some remains were stored in cooler boxes. Others were dumped or hidden behind cat litter to mask the odor. 9 victims in 3 months, 1 every week. The youngest was 15 years old, and his final victim, Aiko Tamura, might have disappeared without a trace if it wasn't for her brother. He accessed her Twitter, found her last messages, and alongside a woman posing as a potential victim, helped set up a sting. Police traced the contact, followed surveillance footage from a train station, and on October 31st, 2017, arrived at Shirahashi's door. They asked where the missing girl was, and his reply was, "She's in the freezer." Inside, police uncovered one of the most gruesome crimes in modern Japanese history. 8 coolers stacked in the apartment, filled with arms, legs, heads. Even the garbage bin contained human remains that was already picked up by recycling services. And maybe the most disturbing detail was that he asked the internet for help. Just months later, a post appeared on 2chan, Japan's anonymous message board. The title was simple: "Urgent, how to get rid of 50 kilograms of meat." The user described how they had acquired 50 kilograms of flesh and needed to dispose of it quietly. Advised pour it in, freeze it, bury it, use cat litter, and the original poster responded, "The freezer is already full. I'll dismantle it and melt it little by little. Please delete this thread." At the time, most people brushed it off as dark humor, but after the murder surfaced, many began connecting the dots. 50 kilograms, roughly the average weight of an adult woman in Japan. Cat litter, freezer, dismemberment. It wasn't a joke, it was real. And whether Takehiro made that post or not remains unproven, but the overlap is hard to ignore. He wasn't just using Twitter to find victims, he may have been using anonymous message boards for disposal advice. When captured, he confessed to everything. He told the police his motive wasn't suicide, it was sex. He admitted to preying on emotionally fragile people because they wouldn't fight back. He never asked for forgiveness, he never appealed his death sentence. And when asked what he would have done if he'd never been caught, he replied, "I would have moved in with another woman and done it all again." The Twitter killer didn't just murder his victims, he made them believe he was the only one who understood them. He turned empathy into a trap. And in a world increasingly connected through screens, his story is a brutal reminder that even the most vulnerable spaces online can become hunting grounds. He waited for them to fall apart, said all the right things to make them feel safe, and led them straight into the dark. October 28, 2019. A man named Masahito Kubo, in his early 40s, began live streaming a climb up Mount Fuji. He was a quiet man, reportedly unemployed at the time, who had taken up streaming on Nico Nico, Japan's homegrown video sharing site. His broadcasts were usually mundane commentary on everyday life, walking around town, sometimes just chatting into the void. But this time, he has something different planned. A solo climb to the top of Japan's most dangerous mountain in the off-season, when climbing is banned and the trails are covered in snow and ice. Mount Fuji closes to climbers after early September due to extreme weather risk. The slopes are steep sheets of frozen snow, with the wind chilling, reaching far below freezing. Climbers are required to wear spiked crampons, insulated boots, avalanche gear, but Kubo wore nothing more than sneakers and a light jacket. In the Nico Nico stream titled, "Let's Climb Mount Fuji in the Snow," he sounds cheerful, even casual. He laughs about how slippery the ground is, he complains about his phone getting cold, and he jokes with the small audience that he might fall. And then, he does.
ここも危ないね。ちょっと斜面、滑る。
The camera jolts violently, then static, then nothing. Many viewers didn't believe what they saw. Was it staged? Was he joking? But within 24 hours, authorities confirmed it. A man's body had been found around 3,000 meters altitude just below the summit, frozen, broken, and alone. It was Kubo. He had slipped on the icy trail and fallen hundreds of meters to his death while live streaming it all. The news spread quickly across Japanese media and international outlets. But the clip never truly went viral. It lingered in forums, whispered in horror threads, and compilation videos of cursed content. You only find if you're already looking. And what's strange is how ordinary the whole thing felt. There was no special effects, no music, and there was no thumbnail. It was just a man, climbing a mountain, breathing heavily into a microphone, casually joking about dying before it actually happened. But maybe that's what makes it so haunting. That some of the most terrifying footage online isn't always the most violent. Sometimes it's the quiet ones and the ones that feel so real. A man, alone on a mountain, talking to no one in particular, and then he's just gone. Tokyo, Halloween night, 2021. What should have been a night of costumes, parties, and the chaos of harmless kind turned into something else entirely. A man in a Joker costume boarded a packed train heading for Shibuya, and by the time it stopped, 17 people were injured. Japan's illusion of safety was torn wide open. The man's name was Kyoto Hattori, 24 years old. And by all accounts, he used to be pretty normal, cheerful even. He lived with his mom and sister. He had friends, a girlfriend, but like most stories that end in horror, something broke along the way. After high school, he skipped college and worked at a manga cafe until they caught him planting a hidden camera in a woman's restroom. And that got him fired. His girlfriend found out and left and married someone else, and that completely shattered him. He spiraled, job after job, and he struggled to fit in. Eventually, he landed at a call center. It lasted about 3 years. But then in June 2021, he was fired. In his mind, that was it. His final rejection from society. He made a decision. If his life was over, he'd take others with him. He took out a massive loan, traveled between cities, and began buying supplies. A $200 Joker costume, 20 cans of lighter fluid, and a 30-centimeter knife. His plan wasn't just to hurt people. It was to make a scene, to become a symbol. A twisted echo of the Joker on the subway in the 2019 film. October 31st, 2021, he left his hotel in Hachioji and boarded a limited express train around 8 p.m. and calmly took a seat. The train was packed. It was Halloween. People thought his costume was clever. They didn't realize they were sitting beside a man rehearsing murder in his head. He pulled out a can of pesticide and sprayed into the eyes of a 72-year-old man sitting next to him. Then he stabbed him in the chest, without hesitation. Tori stood up, walked to the next car, and began dousing it with lighter fluid. Some passengers still thought it was a prank, until they saw the blood, and until the flames lit up the seats. The train overshot the station platform, blocking doors against the wall. People were trapped, screaming, climbing out windows. Smoke filled the cars. Somewhere in the middle of it all, Tori sat down and lit a cigarette, just waiting. 17 people were injured, and Hattori, smiling in his purple Joker suit, was calmly arrested without resistance. He told the police that he admired Joker, and that he wanted to be executed, that killing 2 or more people meant that he'd qualify for the death penalty. He modeled his attack on another stabbing in Tokyo that had happened just months earlier. The incident sparked panic. For a country known as one of the safest on Earth, this was something new. Something that didn't make sense. Japan rarely experiences random mass violence like this, especially not theatrically staged ones. And yet, the Joker costume turned him into a symbol, whether he earned it or not. Someone who wanted to be feared, because being forgotten was worse. The old man he stabbed survived, and Hattori is still awaiting judgment. The echoes of the night, people climbing out of the train windows in terror, linger in Tokyo. Proof that even in the safest places, something can always crack through. Before Twitch, Nico Nico, or YouTube, Japan aired a television experiment so cruel and so surreal that it feels nearly impossible now. But it happened, in front of millions, and the worst part is, everyone laughed. A man named Tomoaki Hamatsu, a struggling comedian, applied for a game show. The show was called Susunu Denpa Shonen, a bizarre reality program that placed participants in extreme challenges. His task was to live in total isolation, naked with no food and no contact. Survive entirely off of sweepstakes, mailing in entries until he won enough to escape. They stripped him of his clothes and put him in a tiny room, turned on the cameras, and let the public watch. He became known as Nasubi, the Japanese word for eggplant, after a cartoon emoji used to censor his nudity. Nasubi stayed in that room for 15 months. He lost weight, he starved, and he went through hallucinations, broke down in tears, and talked to stuffed animals. He thought the footage was being archived for later broadcast, but in reality, millions were watching it in real time. Japanese audiences tuned in weekly. They watched Nasubi win instant ramen and cry from joy. They laughed as he failed to win food for days. He was the most watched man in Japan, and he had no idea. The show wasn't a horror fiction, it was a real state-sanctioned broadcast of human deprivation, wrapped into a game show format. Nasubi was Japan's first viral content creator, not by choice, but he existed before the word livestream even meant anything. And he represents the first time the public truly realized what happens when you turn suffering into entertainment and call it content. They called it a challenge, a game show. But when you strip someone naked, lock them in a room, and make their survival condition based on chance, it isn't a challenge. It's a prison with an audience. The cameras never blinked, the audience never looked away, and for over a year, he was the most watched man in Japan, starving, losing his mind, smiling when the prizes finally came in. He didn't know he was being broadcast. But maybe that's the scariest part. That we do things differently when we know someone's watching. But he didn't. And still, we watched anyway. They're reflections off what we're willing to look at, what we're willing to laugh at, and how much suffering we'll tolerate as long as it's wrapped through a feed.